My name's Eric Storch. I'm a professor of psychology at Baylor College of Medicine. I'm also vice chair of our department, which just means I have administrative roles. But most of my work is focused on doing research in obsessive compulsive disorder. Obsessive compulsive disorder, or TOC, is one of the most common psychiatric conditions that affects children and adults the same. Somewhere in the way of about 2% of people have this, and it's characterized by these two major symptoms. The first are these obsessions, which are these unwanted, upsetting thoughts that don't make any sense. The other are these compulsions. And so the compulsions aim to reduce anxiety related to the obsessions. Now, some common types of OCD are things like excessive concerns about germs or contaminants, things needing to be arranged just so or perfectly, repeating things like opening and closing doors, writing things, erasing them, really scary thoughts. For example, you could do something to hurt someone. You could do something sexually inappropriate, even though you don't want to. And the last one involves big worries that you're going to go to hell, or you offended God, or did something that was morally problematic. So it's definitely a brain disease. And with that, we think that there's certain parts of your brain that are actually implicated or related in OCD. In particular, this loop within the basal ganglia is thought to be relevant. A second reason is genetics, and that's actually one of the biggest reasons why we find ourselves, here today. But there's a very strong genetic component to OCD. Anyone can get this. It doesn't matter if you're rich, poor, what color you are, where you live, El Salvador, Estados Unidos, Africa, Europe, it's all the same, which makes it kind of interesting. Now, there's some thoughts that, again, genetics matter. Sometimes life experiences can also matter as well. But in general, what we see is that anyone has a chance of getting it, which again is about 2% of people at some point in their life will have OCD. Most people develop it during childhood, so about 60%. And then if you don't do anything, you actually see it get worse and worse. Another group that may be more likely to develop this are mothers after they have their first baby, where there's about a 6% chance of developing OCD after that first baby is born. Things like, I could hurt my child even though you don't want to.
Cleaning everything.
Exactly. Actually not very different at all between people in Latin America and the United States or anywhere. Sometimes culture can have a little bit more of a role in different places. So for example, in some countries where religion is not very important, you see a little bit less concern about religious types of OCD. Whereas in countries where religion is important, you see that happen more. But in general, it's really about the same. What's been difficult in the world is that most research on OCD has been done among people who are either Canadian, American, or European, and there's been very little research on people who are Latin American who have OCD. So as we were talking about, we know that there's a genetic basis for OCD. But one of the problems has been that all of the information that's been collected about genetics of OCD has been done in people who are European Caucasian ancestry. So people from Europe, people from the United States, occasionally South Africa, but white people from South Africa. Now, back then, one of the reasons is that it was very hard to analyze the fact that we're all mixed as humans. And if you ask me, my ancestry is from Russia, German, Poland, and then I'm, a kid from New York. Now, what happened over time is that people who are a lot smarter than me figured out how to analyze this issue of ancestry being mixed in everyone. And so what that did was it created this massive health disparity for everyone who's not European Caucasian. Now, if you think about why studying genetics of OCD or other psychiatric disorders is important. It's not that we're going to identify a single gene. It's not the way it works with things like OCD. But you start identifying a whole bunch of different genes. And when you do that, you can start creating something called the polygenic risk score, PRS. What that polygenic risk score does is it can start doing things like predicting who might be at risk of developing a condition like OCD. For example, if you have a child, you could know what the chance of your child having this condition is. Another thing that you can do with genetic information is understand what medications or what therapies may work better for a particular person. So it has this potential to make our treatments even better if we can make them more personalized. However, if we only have our models based on Europeans, it doesn't work for people who are Latino. It doesn't work for people who are African or Asian. And so that's what makes this study so important. One of the best parts of this project is the ability to collaborate with institutions like CUN and investigators that are really leading research in El Salvador. What we're doing here is working together to actually recruit Salvadorian people with OCD to participate in this study. And so that has been incredible, because now not only do we have Salvadorians represented within our sample that we're recruiting, so that the findings are actually applicable to Salvadorians. But we're able to have this collaboration together with CUN, Baylor College of Medicine, and University of North Carolina, and the National Institute of Mental Health.